Walk into any baby store today, and the message is everywhere. Pink aisle for the girls, blue for the boys. It feels as old as biology itself. But open an American Parenting magazine from 1918, and it tells mothers the exact opposite. Pink is for boys, blue is for girls. Same country, same two colors. Flipped. So somewhere between then and now, someone quietly swapped them and convinced you it was nature. The question is who and why?
To find the answer, you have to go back to a time when the rule didn't exist at all. For most of the 19th century, American babies, boys and girls, without exception, wore the same thing: white dresses. Not blue, not pink, white. And there was nothing sentimental about it. White cotton was practical. It could be bleached. A garment covered in whatever a baby produces could be boiled clean and handed down to the next child, whoever that child turned out to be. Gender didn't enter into it because laundry didn't care about gender. Children were dressed as children. The idea that a color could tell you what was under the diaper simply hadn't been invented yet.
And it went further than color. A little boy in the 1800s didn't just wear white. He wore a dress. Both sexes were kept in skirts until around the age of 6 or 7, at a ritual called breeching, when a boy was finally put into his first pair of trousers. There's a famous photograph from 1884, a 2-year-old in a white gown, a feathered hat, long curls, holding a parasol. That child grew up to be Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Nobody at the time thought the picture was strange. A small child looked like a small child. The whole visual machine we now use to sort babies at a glance, the entire apparatus of pink and blue, isn't the erosion of some ancient order. It's a recent invention, bolted on top of a world that dressed all of its children exactly alike.
Color crept in slowly around the turn of the 20th century as synthetic dyes got cheap and washing got easier. And when the baby industry finally reached for a rule, a way to sort the pastels, it landed on the one you'd least expect. In 1918, a trade journal for the clothing business spelled it out for retailers in the plain voice of settled fact. Pink was the color for boys. Blue was the color for girls. And they had reasons, confident ones. Pink, they explained, was really just a watered-down red. And red was the color of blood, of soldiers, of strength, a stronger, more decided color. Obviously a boy's. Blue was delicate, dainty, the shade the Virgin Mary wears in 1,000 paintings. Soft, restrained, feminine. Obviously a girl's. It was all very logical. It was also the exact reverse of what every person watching this has been taught since birth.
And this wasn't one magazine going rogue. In 1927, Time printed a chart of what the country's leading stores actually recommended. Filene's in Boston, Marshall Field's in Chicago, Best & Company in New York, big names. And here's the tell. They didn't even agree with each other. But plenty of them landed on the same instruction: pink for your son, blue for your daughter. There was never a clean consensus to overturn. There was just a mainstream, and it pointed the opposite way from today.
So here's where you expect a villain, a committee, a marketing executive, a single moment where someone stands up and flips the rule. There isn't one. And that's the unsettling part. A rule this total, running households, filling nurseries, sorting children on site, with no name attached to it. The historian who's dug deepest, Jo Pauletti at the University of Maryland, spent years hunting for the decision. She found a drift instead. Through the 1930s and 40s, stores and manufacturers slid
slowly, unevenly, for no reason anyone wrote down, toward the arrangement we use now. Pink eased toward girls, blue eased toward boys. Some cities held out for decades, but by the 1950s, the swap was done. And nobody remembered it had ever pointed the other way. A convention with no author had hardened into a fact with no memory.
And then, briefly, the whole thing nearly vanished. In the late 1960s and 70s, the second wave of the feminist movement looked at pink and blue and saw a cage. Why sort a 2-year-old by color at all? Why tell a girl who she is before she can speak? And the market actually listened. Through the mid-1970s, gender-neutral children's clothing wasn't a fringe idea. It was winning. Beige, green, yellow, red. Catalogs quietly dropped the pink. If you'd frozen the timeline in 1978, you might reasonably have called the color rule a dying custom. It wasn't dying. Something was about to pull it back. And that something is the real answer to this whole story.
What resurrected pink and blue wasn't tradition. It wasn't biology. It was a machine. Across the late 1970s and 80s, prenatal ultrasound spread through obstetrics. And for the first time in human history, ordinary parents could learn the sex of a baby months before it was born. Sit with what that unlocked. Before, a baby's sex was a delivery room surprise. You bought in neutral because you had no other option. Now, there were months to fill, and a known answer to fill them with. And an industry noticed immediately. If a family knows at 20 weeks that it's a girl, you can sell them a pink crib, a pink stroller, pink walls, a pink wardrobe, none of which can be handed down if the next baby is a boy. The color rule wasn't a leftover from the past. It was the most profitable way to organize a brand new market. The more precisely a baby could be labeled before birth, the more that baby could be sold to. So the labels came roaring back, louder, pinker, and more absolute than they had ever been before anyone tried to switch them off.
If you want proof of how recent all of this is, look at the ritual that now defines it. The gender reveal party, the cake with pink or blue baked inside, the colored smoke, the balloon that drops on cue. Feels like a tradition handed down. It isn't. It's usually traced to a single blog post by a single woman, Jenna Carvunidis, in 2008. One party, one cake. Within a few years, it had gone global, complete with its own grim genre of accidents. People have set entire hillsides on fire announcing the color of a baby. And Carvunidis herself has since said, out loud and in public, that she has mixed feelings about the machine she switched on. Hold the timeline up to the light. The color rule reversed itself around 1950. Its signature celebration was invented in 2008. None of this is old. The ritual that now defines it is younger than the phone in your pocket.
So, who decided pink is for girls? Nobody did. Not a scientist, not a committee, not your ancestors reaching back through the centuries. The rule is younger than your grandparents. It has already been the precise reverse of itself once. It survived a decade when the culture actively tried to switch it off. And it's winning today for a single reason. Because it is easier to sell a child a color than to sell them a choice. So the next time you're standing in a store, holding a tiny pink thing or a tiny blue thing, deciding which one is correct, you're not reading off of nature.
You're finishing a sentence a garment manufacturer started about 100 years ago and forgot to sign. And the only thing keeping it true is that you agreed to.